everyone, and welcome to another She Clicks webinar. This webinar is sponsored by MPB, the most secure way to free up funds from your camera gear. Get an online quote, get contact-free pickup from your doorstep, and get paid directly into your bank account. Everything's fully insured and free of charge. Turn your camera into cash, upgrade your kit, and even start a new career. So thank you very much to MPB for sponsoring this webinar. Now, I'm absolutely delighted that tonight's webinar is being presented by Amy Davies, because she's a very good friend of mine, and we worked together when we were both at Future Publishing, and we always got on really, really well. And it's great to have her here, part of She Clicks, and presenting this webinar. Tonight, she's going to be talking about how to get your photos into magazines. Hi, Amy, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. It's a bit windy here. I'm just a bit worried I might open the door later and discover I've gone to Kansas or somewhere like that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking Wicked Witch of the West might be about to fly past the window. So I'm quite high up here, so it's quite likely that would happen. Yeah. So everyone else is enjoying the weather.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. So, I mean, you actually, unlike me, you actually trained as a journalist, didn't you?
It's rumoured to be true, yeah. My editor on Amateur Photographer, Nigel, recently commented that I am the only trained journalist working on the magazine. So
blimey.
It's quite funny, but yeah.
Always the best at spelling.
Yes. Be shorthand.
So over to you. How do we get our pictures into magazines?
Right. Well, it's easy. No, we'll find out. So yeah, just a little bit extra about me for anybody that hasn't gone away and stalked me. As Angela said, I worked with her at Future, and I've been working in the industry for about 11 years or so, just over. And as she said, my route into it is as a journalist rather than through photography, or as a photographer, trained as a journalist, but I always had an interest in photography. So when there was an opportunity to work on a photography magazine and for a company that had a lot of photography magazines, I leapt at that chance, obviously. I worked there for about 5 years, left there about 6 years ago. I was full-time freelance for a few years, and then 2 years ago, I was asked to be the features editor of Amateur Photographer. Most of the time, I'm going to call Amateur Photographer AP. So you hear me say that, that's what I'm referring to, not AP, the press agency, or AP, anything else. It's a part-time job that I do. So, sorry about that. That's the door flying open. The window flying open, sorry. Yes, it's a part-time job. I only do it 3 days a week, so there's a lot to do. For anybody that doesn't know the magazine that well, it looks like this. This is a recent-ish one, I think, maybe the last, not the current one, but the last one maybe. It's a weekly magazine, so we make 51 a year, and we have a double issue at Christmas. So there's a lot of content to produce, there's a lot of opportunities to be published, especially from readers, which we love. And yeah, that's a little bit about the magazine. I want to say a little bit about the word amateur, because, well, the magazine is 136 years old, so it's been published since 1884. And I think back then, amateur meant, and it still does, but is more widely recognised to mean that you just don't make a living from whatever it is. So in this case, amateur photographer. So yeah, it doesn't mean that you're a beginner, or you don't know what you're doing, or that you haven't got much experience. We have people reading the magazine who've been reading it for 50, 60, 70 years, who are, know way more than I do, know way more than probably most pros. So when you're thinking about the word amateur, whether you're thinking about that about yourself or the magazine, it's just something to consider, that it doesn't mean beginner or entry level. So yeah, that was important to say. And what I've done to hopefully help you with understanding how to get published is I've sort of split what I'm going to say into two categories. One is the amateur or hobbyist, shall we say, side. And the other bit is for professionals who are working as a professional photographer and want to know how they can get specifically into our magazine. with a little bit of tips for other magazines, I suppose. So I should say, yeah, so I work part-time at AP, but I also work as a freelancer for a number of other titles, including places like TechRadar, Wired, T3 Stuff, Camera Jabber, and generally sort of tech and photography magazines. So I know a bit about pitching and building relationships with editors and so on. So hopefully this will all be quite helpful. I thought what the easiest thing to do would be to sort of go through some of the recent issues with the opportunities within them to be published. And hopefully, sorry that my dog is not too distracting at the moment. She's decided she wants to sit here and chew this bone throughout this for some reason. She doesn't normally do that. Okay, so also I should say that although I'm obviously primarily going to be talking about AP, a lot of this will apply to the other photography magazines which are on the market, of which there are numerous, most of them published by Future, it would seem. So yeah, so you could take these tips and you can use them for us and you can use them elsewhere, because we tend to all work in a reasonably similar fashion. So the first obvious or easy, simple way, shall we say, to get into AP is right at the start of the magazine. So it's sort of one page in. So you've got the, after the contents is our weekly picture of the week, which is a big picture like this with some information there. And on the other page is 3 more pictures. And we get these from our social media channels. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Flickr. And that's just simply a case of using a hashtag, which is hashtag, in our case, hashtag AP Pick of the Week. And whoever gets the big picture also wins a print. So that's nice. You get to see your work, you know, very nicely printed out. And that's quite simple to do. It literally just takes a hashtag, and obviously your picture isn't guaranteed to get selected. We do get a lot of people, but you've got nothing to lose by putting a hashtag on your picture on social. So I'd recommend doing that. We do have a lot of people enter this, but it would be really nice to see some more women, because it's probably 60 or 70% men at the moment. So that would be nice if we could get some more women in there. So really encourage you to do that. The second way, and this is I'm sort of going a little tiny bit off piste here, because it's more of a writing thing than a picture thing, is this column we have called Viewpoints. And we have this in most issues. And this can be written by readers. And if you've got something to get off your chest, an opinion about something obviously to do with photography, then you can submit Viewpoints, and if we publish it, then you win a year's digital subscription to the magazine. So that's really worth thinking about. And again, this area of the magazine is very densely populated by men. Angela's done a couple of them for us, and I do them occasionally, but generally it's men who've got a lot to say, as we all know. So again, it would be really fantastic to see more women. And it's about 350, 400 words. I appreciate that you might not be a writer, but you don't really need to be, you know, a journalist or a trained journalist or whatever to write a little piece like that. You just have to have an opinion and can sort of string a sentence together. So that's that one. The next one is a really nice one, and this is what we call Reader Portfolio. We have this every other week. If you're selected, you win some software, some Skylum Luminar 4 software. And this is something that a colleague of mine was looking after, but she's recently left. So this, I think, will be coming back to me. I used to look after this about a year ago as well. So I know the ins and outs of this. Now, a lot of people look at the Reader Portfolio and think, that's really intimidating. I'm never going to get published, and why should I even bother, you know, entering? And this is a problem that I think a lot of women have, is that they just for some reason don't have the same level of confidence as men. And actually, we've had some wonderful women produce reader portfolios of all kinds of different subjects and different categories. Sorry, just have to have a drink there. And it's quite simple to submit this, but what I will say is, if you can make my life easier, then I'm more likely to pick you as the person that we're going to publish. And by that, I mean, as I said, I only work 3 days a week on AP, and we have 51 issues a year to get out. Only 6 of us work on the magazine, of which 3 of us are part-time. So as you can imagine, we're all busy, and the quickest thing we can do is often the thing that gets published. So with the Reader Portfolio, there's a form you can download on our website, and I'll put a link somewhere after this, where you can fill in all the information that goes with the pictures. So if you look at this, it has a little bit about the person, you know, where they live, what they like to do, how they got into photography, and that kind of thing. And then each one has a little caption telling you about whatever it is and the camera settings and the camera that they used. If you can provide all of that ahead of time, and I'm looking through all the submissions that come into the inbox, and I can see, right, so-and-so has provided a lovely set of pictures, but not only that, they've provided all the text and all the information that I need to make the feature, then you're automatically elevated above somebody who hasn't done that. You can send the pictures, but a good way, again, to make my life, or the person that's choosing its life, easier is to send them via something like Google Drive or Dropbox that doesn't expire. A lot of people use WeTransfer, and WeTransfer is great, but it does expire after a week. And if you've submitted this and I haven't got around to looking at the inbox for a couple of weeks, and it's expired, and I've got to ask you to resend it, and maybe then you're on holiday or something, you know, it just doesn't help to make my life easier. And so again, somebody who's done it a different way is going to get shunted up the list, if you see what I mean. What works well in terms of the subjects is, well, we have quite a broad mix of different subjects. Landscapes are always obviously very popular, but what I will say is that a lot of enthusiasts and hobbyists, they obviously shoot a lot of different things. So it might be that you do some landscapes, you do some portraits, you do some wildlife, you do some macro, whatever. But that doesn't really make for a cohesive portfolio, whereas a lovely set of, I mean, in this case, it's lovely pictures of Dorset and Hampshire and so on. And they all hang well together, and they all look good together. You know, if this was a random picture of a dog and a landscape and a macro and a portrait, it just, you know, just wouldn't look quite so good together. So have a really good think about the pictures that you're going to submit. And also on that note, don't submit 100 photos, because that shows me that you don't know which ones are your best photos. Have the confidence to go, right, these are my best, we only have 5 photos in these are my best 5, or my best 5 on that subject. And again, you will look confident, and you will look elevated above the others. We also really like people who submit these to be actual readers. And I know maybe that sounds a bit weird. Obviously, it's called Reader Portfolio. So it's, if you are a reader, and you can sort of demonstrate that you're a reader, or just, you know, make it clear that you're a reader, especially people who've been reading it a long time. If you can say something like, oh, I've been reading it since whatever, then that makes it clear to me that you're actually a reader, and you're a fan of our brand and our magazine, and it gives us much more pleasure to publish an actual reader than somebody who just a random person that wants to be published. I hope that makes sense and doesn't sound too harsh. We also have a thing called Join the Club, which runs every other week. So one week it'll be the Reader Portfolio, and the other week will be the Join the Club, and it's a profile on various different camera clubs. So I think there's been quite a lot of SheClicks, the clubs that people in SheClicks belong to, in the magazine. But again, this is something that is a good way to get your pictures in. Again, this is about making my life as easy as possible. Again, this was something that my colleague was looking after, but I will be taking back over, I did used to do this. And it's things like, when you send the pictures, renaming the file so that they've got the name of the picture and the photographer's name, so that when I come to do the captions, it's there and I haven't got to chase you for the captions and ask you, because anything that adds even 5 minutes to my day is going to put me off using it, because I just don't have 5 minutes. I know that sounds ridiculous, but when you add up all the 5 minutes together, it becomes a lot. And so anything that I know that I can do quickly and I can just get on with it, then that always helps. I think we're full on club profiles for the rest of the year, because we have a lot of interest in this, but reader portfolio is not quite as well subscribed, and certainly not super high quality ones are super high subscribed. So send them in. Another way to get involved with our magazine, and you know, a lot of the other magazines do this as well, is to become, I suppose you call it a case study for a feature that we're working on. We do this a lot, where we use reader pictures to illustrate certain features. So one good example here, and I've chosen it because it is also sponsored by our friends at MPB. It's called Secondhand Hall of Fame. This one happens to be about the Sony Alpha 9, but there's all sorts of different cameras. And in that, we'll talk to various people who use whatever camera they're talking about. And the way you can get involved with that is to follow our Facebook and Twitter feeds, and we'll quite often put call outs for people to be involved. I personally put call outs quite often on SheClicks for readers to get involved with various features that I'm working on. This is put together by a man, so he won't be in the SheClicks group, but if you join the AP group or the page, then you should see those call outs and just be ready to respond to them, basically. And you know, you won't necessarily always get chosen to be one of the case studies, but sometimes we'll be looking for something quite specific, and it might be that you match the criteria 100%. So it's always worth just getting in touch. That's one of the sort of technical features that uses case studies, but I do things like I don't know, people who use vintage lenses, or people who use particular types of camera, or people who shoot outdoor portraits, or whatever it is. There's always features that we need pictures to illustrate. And with that in mind, also your own social media is really important too, I would say, because again, it's going back to this idea that I don't have loads and loads of time to find you. If you can make yourself as visible as possible to me, then you've got more chance of being published. I see a lot of talk on SheClicks and also other groups that say things like that they put off reading photography magazines because it's mostly populated by men, or there's not many women in it, and that's absolutely a fair criticism. But basically, most editors that I know are just working with what is put in front of them and what is given to them, and we're all working under such time pressures to get this thing out the door that if a bunch of men have sent you stuff and it's good enough to be published, that's what we're going to use. And it's not about we don't want women, it's that they're not coming forward. So it's about having the confidence to do that. And on that note, you should probably check out the I can't remember what you call them, Angela, the streams of the Curiosity.
Live casts.
Live casts, that's it, sorry. I would recommend watching those, because a lot of this is I'm basically giving you the information that you require, but having the confidence to actually put that into practice is you know, a whole different thing. And those webcasts with Curiosity can really help you to sort of bring that to the fore. And I guess the final way to get into our magazine is with our, the final way, and it's a really important way, is with our Amateur Photographer of the Year competition. We call it APOI, which the current champion is a woman. That's actually one of her pictures there, Karen Steele. It's a yearly competition that runs over several rounds, and it's basically a cumulative competition. So you get points for every round, and that forms the overall winner. But you can also win individual rounds. So even if we're coming towards the end of the APOI year now, you've still got the opportunity to win a round. And here's this is what it looks like when we publish the the winning picture. And again, that is a woman as well, Angie Wallace. I think she's in the group. Could be wrong, but yeah. So she won that this was the up close and personal round, and we have the winner, but then we also have another 19 pictures throughout the magazine, and they've all got, you know, a bit about the picture and so on. And that's quite simple to get involved with. I'm not going to say it's easy, because obviously it's not easy to win a competition or to win a round of a competition, but it's quite simple to enter your pictures. We have there's a free entry code with every issue. I don't know if you can see that. So you don't have to pay to enter one shot. You can pay for more if you wish. It's via PhotoCrowd, so it's all very simple. And again, I know a lot of the sheet clickers use that. And it's a sort of straightforward way of getting in the magazine. And on a similar note, all of the other photography competitions that are out there, of which there are, I don't know, thousands probably, are excellent ways to get yourself published in magazines, because as an editor or as somebody who's looking for content, I mine those competitions endlessly. You know, you've got wildlife photography of the year, close-up photography of the year, landscape photography of the year, food photography of the year. There's a subject for everybody, and you may as well give it a go, because then when I come to look at it and go, right, that's a nice picture, I will put it in. And me personally, I always try to look out for female photographers that are in those competitions, so that we can get more women in the group, in the magazine and in the features, because I know that it is intimidating when you are a woman reading these magazines and you don't see many other women. So I go out of my way to try and find as many women as possible, but it is hard when you don't have as much time as you'd like. I think that's probably about it in terms of the amateur stuff. So if there's any questions already, hopefully that's probably quite a lot of information to take in at once.
We do have quite a few questions already.
Okay.
So let's start with those. I'll start with these ones. So the first one, actually people are saying they missed the hashtag for the magazine. So we will add it, we will put it in the Facebook group so everyone's got to repeat it. That would be handy.
Well, it's hashtag AP Pick of the Week, but what I will also say is that one of the simplest ways to get in the magazine and to know what we're looking for is to read the magazine, and you know, all of this information is in the magazine, and if you can show that you do read the magazine, then like I said, you're instantly elevated above. So, you know, yeah, so basically I don't want to be too salesy about it, but go and buy one and you'll see all the information.
Good point. Okay. Is the reader portfolio only for amateurs?
Yes.
Okay. And how does AP define an amateur?
Well, so in terms of amateur photography of the year, so we'll probably use the same definition. It's anybody that earns less than 10% of their income from photography would be counted as an amateur. So I guess, yeah, the reader portfolio is for that. And I'm going to come on to professionals next. So there is, you know, plenty of opportunity for professionals in the magazine. So we do try to keep things like reader portfolio and that kind of thing for amateurs, because we don't want amateurs to think that they don't have an avenue. So yeah.
Okay. Elizabeth has asked, is there a particular time of day that is good for sending in submissions?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually. And that is actually something I was going to talk about in the pro bit, because we get a lot of people chasing and stuff. We have a weekly meeting every Wednesday. So if you happen to send me something on a Wednesday afternoon, it's probably not going to be until the next Wednesday that I'm talking about it. And so, you know, you need to sort of just be patient, I suppose. There is no right or wrong time to send stuff. But for me personally, because I only work part-time, Fridays are a good day because that's my last day. And then the meeting's on a Wednesday, so I can gather everything together on a Friday ready for the Wednesday meeting. Maybe all my colleagues would say differently, and the people, other editors might have completely different opinions too. Obviously most of the other magazines are monthly, so they'll have different deadline days, different press days and so on. So yes and no, there is Yeah, I would say Fridays are a good day, but always be patient and don't necessarily expect to reply, certainly not instantly.
Yeah.
But I will talk more about that in the pro bit as well.
Okay. I mean, when I've spoken to other members of AP staff, they've said basically before Wednesday is key.
Yes, before Wednesday is key, because
But
that's
it's
when,
to do with your scheduling of your time is.
yeah, I mean,
timing
it's
of you.
with the amateur stuff, it's a bit different because we're sort of, well, for amateur stuff, we don't tend to have a big long discussion about what we're going to put in reader portfolio, if that makes sense.
Right.
I won't discuss that much with my editor or the other members of the team because I'll be trusted to come up with that decision by myself, shall we say. With the pro stuff and the bigger features and the more in-depth features, then we will chat about every single one of those. So with the amateur stuff, it's not quite so crucial, but with the pro stuff, before Wednesday.
Okay. Ruth has asked, just going back to when you were saying about the number of men and women, are you saying that fewer women submit?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I haven't conducted a scientific poll or anything, but yeah, I mean, the makeup of our readers is predominantly male, and that's getting better. I think probably there would have been a time when AP was 99% read by men, and now it's probably more like 70-30, something like that. So it's getting better. Obviously, more can be done, and I know one of the reasons that you set up SheClicks was to make that kind of thing more equal. And we have me and Holly on our team, so we've got a nice mix of female staff. So we try our best to be as diverse as possible, not just with gender. There are other areas of diversity that we're really trying to work on, and it's hard because, as I said, we're dealing with what's put in front of us, and we work with whatever makes our life easiest and what's available to us. And so we need to get women more confident so that stuff is in front of us.
Yeah. And I think the points you were making about, things that make life easier, it's just kind of, if you imagine somebody sent you 10 pictures and you want to string them together, anybody can think about this, what makes it easy? And bear in mind that somebody might be sent 100 pictures in a day from 10 different people, and you're looking and you sort of think, well, those are great pictures. These are equally great pictures, but actually I can see straight away which caption goes with which and all that sort of stuff. That's easier. And also, and that's a sort of stepping stone to a relationship, isn't it? Because suddenly you're sort of thinking, right, actually I can rely on that person to send me the right stuff, or, this person's got something to say. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, this is something I'm going to touch on a bit more with the pro stuff.
Right.
Basically, once you're in kind of thing, and it's once you've proven yourself, then you'll get repeat work. Not so much on an amateur side, if I'm honest, because it's not we wouldn't publish the same photographer twice. Certainly not within a short time frame, anyway.
Or not in the same section.
No, so if you've had a reader portfolio, you're not going to get another one, put it that way. But with the pro stuff, then we've got contributors that we use time after time. You're one of them, various other people, and it's because we know that they can deliver what we need on time, make our lives as easy as possible.
Yeah. Okay. Anila has asked, do you have to be a subscriber to enter, to send in blogs or photos of the week or reader's portfolio?
No, absolutely not. No. As I said, with things like reader portfolio, if you are a reader or a subscriber, then that makes us feel nice and massages our ego, and we go, oh, that's nice, they've been reading the magazine for 10 years and now they're finally getting published or whatever. Not saying that it's going to take 10 years to get published, by the way, but that kind of thing. But no, you don't have to be. You could just be somebody who's read it once or never. I mean, preferably you would read it at least once, so you know what you're sort of doing. But other than that, no.
Okay. Curiosity has asked a question about social media. If you have a small number of followers, but you like to create your own Instagram feed, does this have the same value as when you're pitching yourself to magazines? So what she means is, if you have a small following, but you're mindful of what you're putting on social, so you're not just sticking everything up there. is that better? You know, would you look at someone's Instagram feed and think, well, they've only got 20 followers, but the pictures are amazing, compared to someone who's got a mix of amazing and then pictures of their breakfast?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Yeah, I've not really thought about that before, but actually that's a really good point. A lot of people have 2 accounts or 3 accounts, 4 accounts, whatever, you know, they're free, as many as you want. And it's probably a good idea if you're trying to put yourself out there as somebody to be taken fairly seriously as a photographer, to have one that is dedicated to your photography.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to be really clinical about it, I suppose you could have one for your food photography, one for your landscape photography, one for whatever. I don't think you necessarily need to go down that route, but yeah, you're right. If you can have it so it's more or less all of your photography work and less of the sort of my breakfast stuff, that does help. And I don't personally, when I'm looking at someone's Instagram, I don't really pay that much attention to how many followers they've got. It's all about the image. But actually, one thing I don't think I mentioned about social media is that it can be a really good idea to follow, follow people like me and people who are commissioning editors, and enter into a sort of dialogue with them. And I'm not saying like try and become their best friend or stalk them or whatever, but when they post, if you put a comment on it and sort of build up that relationship, because then when you email me and I see your name and I go, oh, that's that person that comments on my pictures, and it's like a psychological trick, I suppose, that I recognize that name, and so I'm more likely to open it and be receptive to whatever you're emailing me about than just random, I don't know who you are kind of thing. And you can quite easily find people, like generally on Instagram and Twitter. What I tend to do, because you know I'm a freelance as well, so I do all these tricks too, is if you look at any magazine, they'll all pretty much always have what they call a flannel panel, which for anybody who's not in the industry, it's just that, and as it looks like this, it's, you know, where it says the editor's name and all the different people that work for it. And you can just look down that list and go, right, okay, so let's find him on Instagram, let's find her on Instagram. And normally most of these people will have in their Instagram bio that they're the editor of whatever, so you can be sure that it's the right person. And just start following all these people, and you can get to see what they're like, because they're posting probably what they like. You can have a look at what they like, and like I say, comment on it, and maybe send the odd DM or whatever, and just engage with them and build up a relationship, because as with everything in life, it's about who you know and not necessarily what you know. So if you can sort of network in that very traditional sense but online, then that really helps.
Because I don't know about you, if somebody messages me, one of the first things, or you know, they comment on an image, I often have a look at their profile and see what it's like, because they've gone to the trouble of, you know, commenting, and you sort of think, oh, maybe I should follow them, you know.
Totally, yeah. So and you can, and you know, sometimes these editors will put stuff on their Instagram where they're looking for this, that and the other, and you can just see that, and it's, you know, it's an easy way to find out what they're up to. And editors these days are sort of quite, I don't want to say lazy, because that's not the right word, but it's like I said, we don't have that much time to do anything. So if somebody presents themselves to me, then I'm going to go for it, because it's there and easy to access.
Having worked on both monthly and weekly magazines as well as a website, there's, you know, the monthly magazines are pretty intense, but there is that kind of downtime immediately after the issue's been sent. There is kind of like a whew, and everyone relaxes for a couple of days before they all gear up again. I think it used to be a fortnight that everyone used to relax for, but that doesn't happen anymore. Whereas with AP, because it's weekly, it's just non-stop, isn't it? And you're always planning like 4 to 6 or however many weeks ahead. So
actually, with regards to the how far ahead we're planning, that's something to think about with your sort of entries to things like reader portfolio. So like if you're going to send a reader portfolio today and it was, I don't know, summer shots, by the time it's getting published, it's winter, so we might not publish it for that reason. And it's not that we didn't think your pictures were good, it's just it's the wrong time of year. So maybe think about that as well when you're submitting stuff. Just, I would say, try and think 3 to 6 months in advance.
Okay, good advice. Suzanne asked, do you pay for images and writing, or is it for visibility and prices? Now, I think obviously you'll come on to more pro stuff, slightly different.
So yeah, so all the amateur stuff, the reader stuff, I should say, no, there's no payment there, but a lot of them is prizes. So Apoy, the main prize, the monthly prize is £1,000 worth of Sigma lenses. You can choose which lens you want, which is quite nice.
Okay.
And then, pardon?
I said lovely, very nice.
And then if you win the overall thing, then you can have another £2,000 worth of lenses. It's probably too late now for somebody to win because we're into the last 2 rounds to win the overall thing, but you can still win the monthly ones, no problem. And then things like Viewpoint, you get a free subscription, and Read Portfolio, you get free software. AP Pick of the Week, you get free print. So yeah, there's no money, but you get prize.
Yeah.
And then for pro stuff, yeah, you do get paid. So okay, I'm going to talk about that.
You're talking about the Apoy. There were a couple of questions about that. One was, when does the next route? You said there's only 2 more. When will the next route, the next year start?
Right, well, we are currently discussing changing it, so I don't want to say too much in case it all changes. Usually it starts in March, but I think we're going to probably, maybe, almost certainly, don't necessarily trust what I say because it might change by next week, sort of make it so it's actually a whole year, so it starts January, ends in December.
Right.
We're in discussions to do that. Whether we do that or not is still a little bit up in the air, but right now it runs March to well, you can enter until October and then it gets published in December. But right. So yeah, right now there is only 2 rounds to go. So yeah, so if you were entering now and you hadn't entered any of the previous rounds, I don't think you would be able to win the overall title, but you could still win the last of 2 rounds, and that's still good.
Yeah, and get published.
Yeah, and get published. So
sticking with Apoy, Anne has asked, are there set categories?
Yeah, so in this one just that we're currently in, there's 8 categories. The 2 that are left are, well, one's like an open category, but it's called Light and Shadow.
Okay.
It can be any genre as long as it matches that sort of brief. All the briefs are on the PhotoCrowd website. And then the last one is the portrait round.
Right.
We've already had the landscape, the black and white, the wildlife, the close-up, the sports and the street. Yeah, I think that's it. We've already had all those.
Okay. And Laura, convert the opposite to the question about being paid. Someone has asked, does it cost to submit? And it doesn't, does it? It's free.
No, well, Apoy, you get 1 free entry. There's a code printed in the magazine. And then you can pay extra if you want to submit extra stuff, but otherwise, no, it's free.
But read a portfolio and everything else?
Yeah, no, that's all free.
That's all free. Yeah. Okay. Right, a few people have asked about file size or image size and format. What's the best?
Okay, so generally I tend to tell people to send the highest resolution that they have, only because people like resize stuff and it's wrong, and then I have to go back and ask them to send a higher one and whatever. And it's not that we're going to print it at, the side of a bus, or obviously it's only going to be in the magazine, but it just tends to be easier if they just leave it at the highest resolution that they have, so that we've got that to work with. We have an art editor, and she will say to me, oh, that needs to be bigger because I put it in and it doesn't look quite right, and then it's just headache. So yeah, so I tend to say to people, just leave it at the biggest size you've got, and therefore use things like Dropbox and Google Drive, where it's not going to clog up my email. If you want to resize it, you want to make it at least A4. I don't know what the millimeters are off the top of my head, but yeah, A4 size. Yeah. 300 DPI. But yeah, it's the easiest thing is to just leave it, is what I generally say.
I mean, ideally, if you were going to make a compositional crop, do that, but otherwise keep it.
Yeah.
And send us JPEG.
Yeah, JPEG, yeah.
Right. Here's something we've been talking about for a while. Phobo said, what about doing She Clicks or all women AP issue?
Okay, so yeah, that has been something that has been discussed at various times. The honest answer is that it would be lovely to do, but there are concerns, I suppose, that if you did it and it didn't sell very well, then not necessarily because it's all women, but for whatever reason, then we wouldn't be allowed to do it again, and it almost sort of sets us back. So there is always that concern. Yeah. Then there's also the fact that half of our team are men, so if we have to get rid of them for the issue, who's going to do all the work? And we don't have time to do all the work. So there's a sort of practical, pragmatic side to that, and it's something that I would really love to do. This is the big problem we have with AP, is that because it's constant, as you said, because we've got to get these issues out every week, there's no time to sit around discussing what we'd like to do and what we do in an ideal world. It's a constant treadmill. Got to get it out. It's something that I bring up quite often. So yeah, it's probably a bit of a wishy-washy, non-committal answer. But...
Well, I know it's something you and I have spoken about quite a few times, and one of the things we did talk about was maybe actually doing it by stealth. So I think obviously we'd have to involve the editor; he would have to be involved in it, but to produce, have a decision made that it's going to be a women-only issue, but not make a big thing of it.
Yeah,
put it out.
That's quite good. Yeah, I think
we maybe reference it at a later date. Oh, did you notice?
Yeah, so I think it would be like, let's just take a recent issue. It would just look the same, and it would have the same cover lines. It's just that when you actually read it, it would all be by women. But like I say, the problem is half our staff are men, so the actual getting the stuff done would be problematic. So
so I could do all the reviews, obviously.
Yes, obviously. It's something that I think we'll continue to talk about it, and hopefully one day. And I'm sorry, not a bit a bit of a better answer, really. It's at least an honest one.
No, and somebody has already said thank you for your honesty, so this is good. Linda has asked, do you look for more edgy photos, e.g., for example, surreal, abstract, or political? Sorry, and then Facebook makes it quite hard to find, or do you go for more sort of standard pictures?
Well, it depends. Is the answer that you probably don't want, but yeah, it really depends. I would say that we don't do a lot of that kind of stuff, but that's not necessarily because we don't want to. It's because it doesn't get submitted that often. Yeah. I think if the pictures are of a high quality and they've been executed well, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. As for political stuff, that is an interesting one, because we do cover political stuff, and this is something that I'm going to talk about in the pro section. We have a regular thing called photo stories, which is generally photojournalism, so that will naturally be political, but we like to say that it's political with a small p, in the sense that we don't take a stance ourselves. We wouldn't say, I don't know, we hate the Tories, or the police are terrible at brutality, or any, we wouldn't put those opinions across, because that we don't think that's our place. But we certainly would do stories about somebody who covers political protests, for example, or somebody who's done a project on, I don't know, the environment, or whatever it is. So yes and no is the sort of, or it depends is the answer.
Okay.
But what I would say is unlikely to probably, if you're overtly political in your photography, it's probably less likely to get published if the point of your photography project is to be political, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or if specifically controversial.
Yeah. So if you, I don't know, if you're doing a project on why you hate Boris Johnson, and it's it's just an out and out critique of the government,
Yeah.
there might not be something that's particularly appealing, especially if the photography isn't particularly unusual or groundbreaking.
Okay. Yeah.
Hopefully.
Understood.
But don't let that put you off. I mean, you may as well submit it, and if you don't, it doesn't get taken, then that's, you know, you haven't lost anything.
Well, maybe at least you've got everything together, then there might be a more appropriate magazine than a photographic magazine to send it to, perhaps.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Charlotte has asked, do you let photographers know when their images will appear or that they've had a successful submission?
So for the reader picture of the week, then you would know because we'd have to ask you for the picture. So let's say you'd put the hashtag on one of your Instagram pictures, then somebody will email you and say, can we have the high res of that? So you'd know that way. Reader portfolio, we tell you because we need to know your information to get the prize out to you. Join the club, well, that's, you know, that tends to be like the club secretary or publicity secretary or whatever tends to get involved, and they fill out the form that you need and stuff, so they would obviously know. And yeah, I mean, I think we would always do our best to tell people that they've been published. Again, there will be occasions where for some reason we've published your picture and not told you because of time pressures or just forgotten or something, but 99% of the time you would know.
Amber has asked if there's an issue about submitting something that's been submitting a photograph that's been published elsewhere.
Not as far as I know. I mean, obviously, obviously we don't want to have the same pictures as digital camera or digital photographer or, you know, all the others. But we don't really have time to check where you published it before. So to be honest, unless it was on the front cover, might not know. So no, not really. It's nice if you're honest about it and say that you've already been published there, I suppose, and so we can make that decision. But I don't think it would make us turn you away. No. Okay. Maybe if you'd been published the month before.
Or a massive feature or something like that.
Other than that, no.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, it makes you look good, doesn't it? You've already been published by somebody else. You're obviously quite good.
Yeah. So if it's competition or something, then it's the image speaks. And the follow-up question from Amber is: does the photographer retain the copyright to the image if you publish them?
Yeah.
Always. Yes. Okay. Right. One last question. Lisa has asked, why do you use PhotoCrowd? She signed up once, but found their constant daily spam terribly annoying, so she unsubscribed.
Well, the simple answer is simplicity. You know, you can imagine the amount of admin that's involved if we were receiving 1,000, well, more than, we get about, per round, we get, you know, between 1,000 and 2,000 entries. So if 2,000 people were emailing us with all their pictures and we were having to sort them into some kind of easy to judge system, it would be an absolute administrative nightmare, whereas PhotoCrowd takes all of that and does it for you and presents it in a very easy to handle way. I don't really know anything about the spam emails. There must be a way to turn that off.
Yeah, you should be able to unsubscribe from the emails.
But it's just the ease of use, really, from both from our end and from your end as well, from from the person that's uploading it. And
I mean, we changed on Camera Jabber to PhotoCrowd because previously we were doing it on social media, and you're looking at several different hashtags, and then you're trying to get the image the right size. And
exactly, it's too hard to do it any other way, and they provide that functionality very well, really, and it's much easier for us to go through, and we can, they obviously you won't know this if you're somebody that's submitting stuff, but the way that you judge it is that they have these shortcuts that you can put them all into certain categories so that you can go, right, that one's been shortlisted, that one's a no, that one's in. It's very quick and easy to get through it all. And like I said, we all work, well, most of us work part-time, or we're trying to get all these issues out and judge Apoi at the same time. Anything that speeds up that process is a winner.
The beauty of it as well is it collates everybody's response. So it kind of, if 3 people make an image, put it in their top 3 and somebody else puts it in their top 10, you know, it kind of, it applies an algorithm and adds it all up and makes it nice and easy.
And yeah, and you can be sure from your end as the submitter, you can be sure that it's actually come through, because quite often with competitions that don't use something like that, it'll be relying on somebody sending an email and then you don't get any confirmation, then they send us follow-up emails and did you get my email? And it's just, you know, if we had somebody working on this independently full-time, then maybe we wouldn't use Photograph, but we don't.
We've kind of reached the end of the questions. If you want to carry on with the pro section.
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of made the assumption that most of the people watching this are amateurs or hobbyists, but I guess there might be some pros or people who maybe straddle the two, I suppose, or are looking to turn professional. So as the features editor, I look after things like interviews with photographers, book reviews, exhibition listings, final analysis column, which is at the back, and it's a photographer talking about a different picture. Our Legends of Photography series, which is about, you know, historical photographers. And then we also have a technique editor called Holly, and she, well, as the name implies, she looks after the technique section. So that'll be your sort of how-tos and your software tutorials and how to do this, how to do that. And both of us together work quite closely, and we both need pros to help us and feature pros. Obviously, as I said, the magazine's called Amateur Photographer, but most of the features and the technique stuff is pros, because obviously amateurs sort of find those people inspirational and aspirational. We also have a technical editor who looks after all of the camera reviews, lens reviews, all that kind of stuff, but that's probably less likely to, or less, it's probably a section that you're less likely to get involved with, because you'd have to be a sort of established camera reviewer like you or like me. So that's, yeah, it's a bit harder to get involved with, I suppose, from a starting position of, you know, not been in the magazine before. So yeah, so I'll mainly be talking about the features and the technique side of things. And I'd say that there are 3 main reasons why we'd feature or do an interview with somebody as a professional, and that's because they've got a exhibition coming up, a book about to come out, or that they're doing some sort of project that is reaching a peak or finishing, or, you know, there's some reason why we're going to talk about it this week or this month or whatever it is. And with that in mind, if you are somebody that is working on a project or an exhibition or a book or, you know, something like that, again, you really need to think about lead times. And I know I mentioned that briefly in the amateur section, but that's really especially important for the pro stuff, because we are just not going to run something as quickly as people might think. People think because we're a weekly that I think, well, and I probably thought this before I got involved in the industry, and certainly with AP, is that they think that maybe you're planning it the week before it comes out. And it's just not the case. We were planning it sort of 3, 4, 5 months in advance and working on a number of different issues at the same time. The monthlies probably work a bit different because they can concentrate their time a bit more on each individual issue, but they're probably also working a little bit like that, where they're thinking about the December issue while they're still working on the August issue or whatever it happens to be. But with us specifically, so we've got our planning meeting tomorrow, and we'll be starting to talk about the early December issues. So that gives you an idea of how far in advance we plan stuff. Now, that's not to say that we can't move stuff around or we can't change things, but again, because of time constraints, the less that we have to do that, the happier we are, because changing stuff around always means a headache somewhere along the line, because then if you move something, then you've got to move whatever was in that slot and put it somewhere else. So we do try to avoid doing that. So if you've, for example, got a book coming out in December, then I need to know about it now, today. It's no good telling me in November that your book's coming out in December and you want publicity then. So, or if you're finishing your project and you want the feature to coincide with the end of your project, then you kind of need to tell me 3-4 months in advance. Again, especially important with exhibitions, because I presume you want someone to go to your exhibition, and if it's only on for a month, it needs to run at the time it's on, right? So for that, so think about those. Somebody asked about budgets. I'm going to be frank here and say budgets are not what they were, and the money in publishing is, you know, taken a serious nosedive. When we're doing features on things like projects, books, exhibitions, there is an expectation that you will give us some stuff for free, because we're basically giving you free publicity for your thing. So if you want to sell copies of your book and it gets in our magazine, then it's basically, you know, quid pro quo relationship. Obviously, you don't have to agree to that, but that's going to be the expectation that is there. So just to manage expectations. But there is budget available. I think it's something that you've mentioned before. Generally, the budget tends to be allocated more towards writers than photographers. Again, mainly because a lot of the stuff that we do is about projects and exhibitions and books and stuff where we can get the pictures for free, and competitions is a big one where you get a load of free pictures. So we're going to need someone to write about those things. So it generally be that the writer gets the fee. But there are occasions where we give the fee to the photographer, or you could split it. These aren't huge fees, so splitting it can mean it's not that much. Again, just want to be honest. So yeah, just have that in mind, and have an amount. If you want money, have an amount in mind that you want. Don't be afraid to ask for it. We can only say no. And then you can go away and decide whether you want to carry on or not. But always get that information before you agree to do anything. Don't do something and then a month later go, oh, by the way, what was the fee? Because if it turns out that there is no fee, you're going to be upset. So, and I'm going to be worried, because I'm going to think, oh my God, I've got to deal with somebody who's pissed off about it. So yeah, so just wanted to sort of quickly mention about budgets. But that said, I hope that doesn't put people off. We love receiving ideas, and we're very open to ideas from writers and photographers. If you can do both, then that's awesome. It is quite rare that people can do both, or do both well. Generally, we find that we prefer people to be excellent photographers, because one of us can do the writing, or we can find another writer, then be a mediocre photographer but a good writer. That makes sense. It's better to be the other way around. You can always work on someone's words. You can't really improve someone's pictures that they submit, you know. And the biggest thing that I can say to anybody that's pitching to our magazine and to any magazine is to really know it, to read it, to go out there and buy a copy. These days, it's so easy to get hold of back issues through things like Readly. I use Readly every day. There are other services, I think, you know, Pocket Mags do something similar. I think there's an Amazon Prime functionality where you can look at magazines. Our magazine, you can look at all of the other photography magazines, or pretty much all of them. You can look at, I think there's something like 5,000 magazines on Readly. So from a commissioning editor's point of view, if it's quite obvious that you've never even flicked through the magazine, then I think, well, why should I commission you? And you clearly don't understand our audience, or how we'd write, the tone, that kind of thing, and the thing we'd publish. So just buy some issues, or get a Readly subscription, or go down the library, you know, make the effort to really show that you know us, and that you know what we would and what we wouldn't publish. When you come to submit an idea, again, a lot of this advice comes down to me not having much time, but it's, you know, it's the honest truth. When you're sending an idea, I want you to get to the point as quickly as possible, and don't send me your dissertation. Send me 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. Start with the idea. then finish with who you are and why I should commission you or why I should use you, because I don't really want to read like 7 paragraphs about you did this at uni and then you had this experience and then I don't really care, to be honest. Like, I just want to know what the idea is first before I can then go on to make the decision about whether you're the right person to work with. Don't send 50 ideas at once, because I'm just overwhelmed by that, and I'm just going to think, again, it's a bit like with the reader portfolio. You send me loads of ideas, I think, well, which one's the best one here? If you don't know, why should I know? So at most, I'd want 3 ideas from somebody I'd never met before. Maybe once you've got a bit more of a working relationship with me or with any other editor, you might submit more of a list of ideas, because then you'd have that sort of conversational flow a bit better. But certainly somebody that's a cold, preferably 1 idea, really good, strong idea. Here you go, bang. Do I want it, yes or no? But up to 3 is kind of okay. In your email, include as much information that is easy for me to access as possible. So if you've got Instagram or a website or whatever it is, put a link into that so I can quickly go, right, this is what their photography is like. Or if you've got like a project page or something, boom, I can look at it without having to hunt for it. That's something that quite often people will send emails and they go, I'm doing this project on whatever, and there's nowhere in the email how I can actually look at that project. And I just think, I can't be bothered to find you, because then I've got to spend time and it might be rubbish. So just show me what it is. Then once you've submitted the idea, and you're probably sitting there thinking, oh my God, when am I going to hear back? And what probably feels like ages to you isn't ages to me. So if you sent an idea, you'd probably love to get a response within the hour. That's never going to happen. You're probably not even going to get a response within the first week or 2 weeks, unless it's really timely, and or maybe you just happen to have sent an idea that I was looking for anyway. Sometimes that sort of weird magic coincidence happens. But generally, you've really got to have patience, because another thing that does nobody any favors is constant pestering and chasing, especially from somebody you don't know and you've never met. Now, if you were to email me and I didn't respond, and then you said to me, you haven't responded to my email, then I wouldn't mind that, because we're already friends and we already know each other. And the chances are I probably have forgotten, and I think, oh yeah, I better do that. But if you're somebody I've never met, you send me an email on Friday, and then on Monday, did you get my email? It's just like, oh God, this person's going to be a nightmare to work with, because they're just, anxious all the time. So again, I hope that doesn't sound harsh, but it's about making that sort of, again, making my life as easy as possible and not sort of annoying me. I hope that doesn't sound horrible. Hopefully I'm not coming across as this horrible mega devil wears Prada.
I think it's an important point though, because I know this is why, or partly why, a lot of men get published, because they kind of got into the cycle. They've got into the cycle of being in the magazine, and therefore the editor or whoever's commissioning kind of thinks, I know that person, I know they'll do this job. And if they message to say, oh, I'm off to, I don't know, Ethiopia or somewhere like that, I think, oh, well, that's an interesting project. Yes, we'll take that on board, because they've developed that rapport.
Yeah.
So in order to kind of break through that, whatever it is, 70% of the readership, or sorry, of what's published being men, women need to kind of, it's not that, you kind of need to get to the next level. So you need to make it as easy as possible to get to the next stage, develop that relationship, and then say, and then be able to sort of say, oh, I'm going to send you this, I'm going to send you that. And I'm saying that as someone, I know that if you see a woman's email address ping in, I know that you actually will give it an extra kind of, I know that you want that to be great.
But I mean, you shouldn't, I would assume kind of, maybe not the opposite, but I don't think most editors would really care.
No.
You're a woman, to be honest.
No, they don't. The most of them don't think about it, but I know you've got a heightened awareness of wanting to get more women into MP.
And that's actually
an agenda.
That's reminded me of something else. I get a lot of emails from people, and I suppose it's just a naivety, where they say things like, I really like macro photography. I'd like to write an article about it. Can I do that? It's like, well, no, it's not.
It needs an angle or an edge.
Yeah, you haven't given me an idea. Or even worse, somebody goes, I'd love to write for AP. Let me know if you need anything. And I'm kind of like, well, who are you? What do you do? What do you write? Like, what experience have you got? I need to know all of that stuff. As if you're a professional writer or photographer, it needs to be, your ideas need to be succinct, to the point, but also clear, and tell me what makes them special or unique or whatever. Just saying, I want to do an article about macro.
Yeah.
Well, what about macro? And again, that comes back to our audience are not beginners. They're not entry level generally. Like I said, most of our readers, or I think we did a reader survey, and something like 30 or 40% of the readers have been reading the magazine for longer than 30 years. So, that gives you an example, a hint as to how experienced these people are. They don't want to read a beginner's guide to macro. They want to read a specific technique about something, that they've not thought about before, or when it comes to the features and the interviews and stuff, something that they've generally not seen before, or something that's done particularly well, or something that's new, or something that's got some sort of hook. So again, you can't just write in and say, oh, I really like photographers, can I interview one? Well, who do you want to interview, and how are you going to do that? And do you already know them? Have you, do you think that would be easy to do? And how are we going to get the pictures? And there's lots of things to think about. And to go back to the chasing up thing with the don't pester me, I'm going to be really blunt here and say that sometimes you might not get a response at all, because I keep saying the same thing, but I just don't have time to give full and detailed feedback to everybody that emails me. And I will try to do that, especially with women, if I'm honest, but sometimes there just aren't enough hours in the day. And following on from that, if you do get rejected or you just don't hear anything, I really want to make it clear that doesn't mean that your idea was rubbish, or that you are a rubbish photographer or writer or whatever. 9 times out of 10, it just means that it wasn't right for that particular time, or that we've done something similar quite recently, which is another reason why you should be reading the magazine. Because if you know what's in the magazine already, you won't pitch the same thing. Some people make that mistake. They go, I've seen you've done a feature on, I don't know, tabletop projects. That's the one that's in front of me. I do that. Would you like another feature on it? It's like, well, no, of course not, because we've already done that recently. We wouldn't be doing that again for several months, if not years. So, that having that knowledge of the magazine will really help you. And not just with our magazine, with every magazine that's ever been published, to show that it. I trained as a magazine journalist, and that's, like the first thing that they tell you, the first lesson is to know what you're pitching to. And so, yeah, don't give up, and don't think, oh, well, I pitched this idea, it didn't get taken, or I sent in my photos and they didn't get taken, so therefore I am a rubbish photographer. Well, it's not as simple as that, is it? And I think that's what, curiosity would help with, that kind of mentality of, no, don't give up. That's, this is the thing that men don't do. They don't give up. They just go, right, okay, well, here's the next idea.
Yeah.
And that's how you sort of build up, how you build up that confidence is the big part of the problem. And then, but let's say you do get some sort of commission, or that we want to use your pictures or words or whatever it is. Once you've got that agreement in place, it's really important to make sure you follow the brief, fill in everything that we've asked for, get it in on time. And if there is any reason why you're going to be late, to give us as much notice as possible. Now, we're not horrible people, and we know that things can go wrong. And if there's a reasonable explanation as to why something has gone wrong, and that's therefore it's going to be late, we're not going to hate you or think that you're a terrible person. But we will think you're a terrible person if on the day it was due in, you turn around and say, oh, I haven't done it because of X, Y, Z. Because if you told us the week before, we can sort of work around that and, figure something out. So yeah, and that is the kind of thing that will lead you to get more work. If we know that you're reliable, you get it in on time, you follow the brief, you do everything that we ask for, and you do it as easily as possible. And you mentioned about the making life easy by renaming files and things like that, or making sure that every caption matches the picture. And don't just send me, you know, if you're going to do I mean, I don't look at a technique section, but this is something that Holly mentions quite often, is that she'll spend a lot of time trying to match up the pictures to the text, because somebody's written a big long feature. It might be sort of 8 pages long, so there's a lot of text there, and then all the file names of the pictures are things like DSC0345, and there's absolutely no correlation that you can easily see as to what belongs with what. And then so she spent half the day trying to figure that out, whereas if you as the writer and the person that's put that together, you know that without much thought, so you can just rename it to, like, you know, macro shot 1 or whatever, and then ideally put that in a text. So things like that, and then using, again, like I say, using things like Dropbox and Google Drive rather than WeTransfer or something that's going to expire, really helpful, because the two of us work part-time. We are quite often firefighting. We're just working on the issue that's going to press tomorrow or whatever. And so we might not get around to looking at whatever you've submitted until next week, and then it's expired, and then I've got to ask you for it again. And, you know, that happens a lot. So that's one of my biggest tips, and it's a small thing, but a really significant thing, you know, using something that doesn't expire. I think that's about everything. But what I did was I wrote down a sort of summary.
Okay.
That hopefully, you know, I've obviously spoken a lot. If I sort of read out the summary, hopefully then people can take that away. So the first one is be active. That's really important. I don't have time to find you. You've got to make yourself known. So be active on social media, get involved, comment, look for opportunities. Don't wait for them to come to you. Second one is don't be easily offended, or, you know, develop a thick skin. If you get rejected, that's fine. That's life. On to the next thing. Keep submitting, keep trying, don't give up. The third one is read the magazine, know our audience, know our tone, know what we would publish, know what we wouldn't publish. You know, I would, if possible, read as many as you can before submitting, especially on the pro side. Read as many as you can, or look at as many as you can. Then the last one is, you make my life easy. You know, I feel like that's what I've kind of on about, that I don't have much time and blah, blah, blah. But it is so true. And I think the vast majority of editors these days are facing the same problems. Nobody has huge teams anymore, or admin assistants or whatever. We're all fighting a battle to get stuff out. And the easier you can make stuff, the more chance you're going to get of being published and repeatedly being published.
And I think, just to reiterate, you said, you know, if you get rejected, it's not you that's getting rejected. It's not necessarily your image being rejected. It could be timing. It could be a million reasons. It could be the editor might be kicking themselves because they didn't use your picture, because it was came in 2 weeks after they just sent an issue, which had, you know, something about that brief. So it could be all sorts of reasons.
And I mean, and that also comes back to, with the competitions thing, is that, you know, a lot of people will go, well, I entered, I don't know, Wildlife Photographer of the Year and I didn't win. Well, of course you didn't, probably the first time you entered, because maybe you weren't good enough when you first entered. But that's, photography is a journey, isn't it? And the stuff that you do at the start of your photography career or as a hobby, it generally isn't that great, and you just get better and better and better. And the key thing is not to give up and not to be disheartened, and to keep going. The person that won last year's Wildlife Photographer of the Year, for example, because I met him, he'd been entering it for something like 15 years until he finally won. And so, you know, it's just a message to just not give up, and not take it personally either, not take it to heart if you don't win.
And how much more worthwhile, actually, because if you enter something and you win it immediately, like, oh well, that was easy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like
how we felt after 15 years or whatever of entering this, especially that competition is particularly prestigious, but, you know, imagine how he felt after 15 years of submitting his stuff. And he wins it. It's like, wow, amazing. So yeah, just keep going.
I always think that all the people who don't make the shortlist and don't make, you know, the top 3 or whatever, they make that competition, because the person who's won is, wow, there were 10,000 submissions and I won it. But if everybody else said, oh, well, I'm not going to enter because I won't win, it wouldn't have been very special at all.
Exactly. And then, you know, when we're doing features, so this is another thing I didn't mention, it only just popped into my head. When we're doing features on these competitions, because we're a magazine and not online, I mean, we do have a website, but all of the websites will have published the winner of wildlife photographer of the year. So when we come to do our feature, it's probably like a month, 2 months later, or whatever it is. We don't want to publish the winner because that's already been seen everywhere by everybody. We want to go through the shortlist or the commended or the second place, third place, and find the stuff that isn't so widely seen. So just because you don't win a competition doesn't mean you're not going to get published. So that's another reason to just go for it and see where you land.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just before we finish, a couple more questions. Jackie asked, say, if you only have Facebook rather than Instagram, does that mean that your pictures are less likely to be noticed?
Well, I mean, it depends on the context, but I would say that Instagram is the primary social media site for photography. You know, it's what it was designed for. It displays it generally better than Facebook. I mean, obviously, Instagram is owned by Facebook, so there is that sort of relationship. And I think I would probably question somewhat why somebody who's a photographer didn't have Instagram. If I'm being completely blunt and honest, I'd be curious. I'm not saying you have to have it, but I'd be curious to know why you didn't, because it is so much better than Facebook.
Yeah, it has really become the go-to, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's, you know, I mean, obviously in back in the day it was Flickr and that kind of thing, and now nobody really sort of talks about that. But Instagram, the quality on Instagram is incredible, and the amount of stuff on there is incredible. So standing out is quite hard, but I don't think you're going to stand out on Facebook as easily. And I think Instagram is probably a lot easier thing to sort of peruse as an editor.
Yeah, it makes it easy, and you can see such a huge volume of stuff. And as you build up, it's presented so nicely. So if you've got, you know, even if you've only got 9 pictures on Instagram to make a nice grid, they can look fantastic.
Exactly.
Whereas Facebook just mushes everything up.
Yeah, so you know, Instagram's free. There's no real major downside to being on Instagram. So I kind of would just say, just get on there and just
go for it.
Put yourself out there and avenue.
Okay, and then the last question. Oh, hang on. No, somebody else has just come in with another one. But right. So Suzanne said, do you take pro submissions from other countries, or is it just UK?
No, it's worldwide. Pro and amateur, worldwide.
Okay.
You know, anywhere. Yep.
Okay, and then the last one, Kirsty said, so Flickr is not a go-to anymore. I don't think it is. I mean, I find it is very useful for some things.
Yeah.
It's not where I go to look for images, to be honest.
It's really sad, isn't it? Because obviously, yeah, it really was the go-to place. It was full of really good stuff, and it's just sort of dwindled a bit. And if I'm honest, I don't remember the last time I went on Flickr, whereas I go on Instagram probably every day, several times a day, you know. So I'm not saying don't be on Flickr. There's, you know, again, accounts are still free, aren't they? I think.
Well, yes. I think there is a cut-off now that you have to pay, but it's not that much.
Yeah, there's not going to be any downside to being on Flickr, but I would probably say if you're going to put stuff on Flickr, you may as well put it on Instagram as well, and then you've got every base covered, I suppose.
Yeah. I suppose the ease with Flickr is you can just drag things across and it's there, whereas Instagram, you've got to get it on your phone and then put it up. But it does at least handle it nicely, and you can do convenient.
Yeah, and you know, if you're sending a portfolio in and all your stuff's on Flickr, that's absolutely fine. You know, send me a link to Flickr. I'm not going to be like, oh my god, this person used Flickr, go away. Of course not. You can use Flickr for that reason. That's actually a really good use of Flickr. And one of the good things about Flickr is that you can obviously create albums and so on. So if you wanted to submit a portfolio of just your macro stuff or just your landscape stuff or whatever, that might be easier than if you've got an Instagram that's got a bit of everything. So it has its uses. It's just probably not as big or as popular as it once was, but yeah. Hazel's reminded me that you can only have, well, it's 1,000 photos, which sounds like a lot, but once you get into it, it's not a lot once you get into it.
That's a weekend, isn't it?
But again, I mean, it sort of comes down to being selective, doesn't it? And I mean, the old days, you stick as many as you wanted up there, and you probably just wanged it all on without much thought. Whereas if you've got to actually sit down and think, right, what are my 10 best macro shots, then so I can make a nice album to send to editors, then maybe it will actually concentrate your mind.
In the old days, Amy, you put your slides in a box and you send them. That's
I
the
wouldn't know
old
about
days.
that. I wouldn't know about that.
Well, thank you very much. Everyone's really enjoyed your webinar, and everyone's really appreciated your honesty and candor.
Well, sorry, I just wanted to quickly say we do a lot of film stuff in the magazine. So if anybody's working with film, I think we're pretty much the only, certainly only mainstream big magazine, photography magazine, that still has a lot of film content in it. So, you know, most of the other magazines are almost exclusively digital. So we have a lot of film content. So if anybody that likes film stuff or wants to talk about film stuff, please just send that in, because a lot of people don't realise necessarily that we still do it. So
yeah, and alternative techniques.
Yeah, anything that's a bit unusual, we like. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thanks very much. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.